Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Newfield Network grad panel. My name is Linda Fisher, and I'm a Newfield grad, as well as I'm a director of client and community relations with Newfield Network. We are celebrating Newfield over 36 years of training 65,000 masterful coaches, leaders, and individuals to be powerful agents of change. Newfield was founded to provide transformational training to coaches, leaders, and organizations, empowering them to authentically lead and design a new world. It's my pleasure to lead this call today. We have 4 Newfield graduates, alumni from various industries and areas of expression in the world, and I'm really delighted to have them here today. It's a bit of a joy for me just to be able to play and see people that I haven't seen in a very long time. So I'd like you, Mark, first to introduce yourself and tell people why you're here and when you went through the program and such.
Sure, absolutely. My name is Mark Robertson. I'm in Nashville, Tennessee, Music City. I went to Newfield's program in 2001 and was also a mentor coach in Newfield's foundational program from 2003 to 2010. So I got a really interesting look at that experience for students. I've been an executive coach now for 23 years. Absolutely love it. It gets better and better every year, to my surprise, actually. And I would say I don't really specialize in any particular industry. I would say the models, the Newfield work actually lends itself to really any industry because we're coaching human beings. Right. And so I would just say it's less about industry. I do work with for-profits and nonprofits. It's really more about the niche, the specialty. And I often will say, I coach on all things conversation and relationship oriented in a leadership development context.
Thank you, Mark. And again, you know how happy I am to see you. So thank you. Anne Marie?
Hi, everyone. I am Marie Molina. I am an intuitive life and career coach and Reiki master, and I graduated in Newfield in 2016. I was in corporate America in the financial industry for about 2 years during and after my Newfield graduation, and then started my own coaching business where I coach women in transition, whether that's career or life, finding their best feeling life. And so Newfield was definitely the foundation for that. I am in Milwaukee. I guess, Mark, if you're Music City, I'm Beer and Cheese City. Which go really good together.
Yes, they do.
Yes, they do. So I'm just happy to be here and to share my experience and journey that Newfield was a huge part of.
Thank you. So good to see you, Anne Marie.
Thank you.
Carol.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Carol Taylor. I live in the Seattle, Washington area. I was a healthcare executive for over 30 years. And when I left the role that I had played last in 2018, I was interested in pursuing my next chapter. Wasn't sure quite what. I graduated from the Newfields program in December of 2019. Started my own business shortly after, and I've been doing both executive and professional life coaching since that time. So it's been a wonderful journey, and once again, a joy to have these foundations in my life.
Thank you, Carol. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
And Nate.
Hey, good morning, everyone. I'm Matt Erickson. I'm from Omaha, Nebraska. And for those of you not familiar with Omaha, Nebraska, we are a part of America, actually. Very few people know that. I came through the Newfield program, started in March of 2019, finished up spring of 2020. And so far, all of my coaching has been in a corporate environment, but I'm on the brink of breaking free of that and going independent. So. And I absolutely wouldn't be doing that without everything I learned at Newfield marvelous program. And this is actually the first thing I've got to do with Newfield since I got done with the program. So the timing couldn't be better, because it's just great to be reconnected with the program, and you know, it's really great timing. That's all I can say. I'm getting emotional. Sorry. Glad to be back though.
Never have to apologize for emotions in this house. Yeah. And I can't get rid of the smile on my face. You know, so first of all, we like to have fun. So let's just say that. So hello and thanks for the, okay. We have somebody from Johnson City, Tennessee saying hi to you right now. Mark's giving you a thumbs up, as you can see. Well, I know for myself as a 2008 Newfield Network student and a 2009 graduate, that back 12 years ago, it was difficult to think about finding a coach training program. Where do I go? And now there's even more programs out there. So I would love for you all to share with the audience, why Newfield, and what was your journey to get to Newfield, and anything that you want to say beyond that. So we'll just start with the basic question, because everybody starts there. They have to figure out why Newfield. So who would like to start for today?
I could jump in real quick.
Please. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think I've got a pretty interesting story on how I came about Newfield. I knew I wanted to get into coaching on my own. I was already coaching within an organization. And so that thought was already, you know, bubbling in the back of my mind, but I hadn't gotten serious about actually looking for a program. And one Saturday afternoon, I remember it would have been probably late 2018. I was preparing some work for a class I was going to teach around emotional intelligence. And one of my resources was this book called A Coach's Guide to Emotional Intelligence. And I don't know if you'll be able to see this, but it says with contributions from Julio Story. And so I was like, hey, I'll check this out. And I got to the section that Julio wrote, which was called Emotions as a New Field of Learning. And it just blew my mind what he had in there. And so I immediately started Googling him, and it mentioned the program in his writing. And so I found that online, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is the program I'm going to go for. And I looked at some other programs then as well. And, you know, everything I could see, nothing was comparing to Newfield. And so started the process of applying, and you know, it was just really serendipitous how that it just fell into my lap, and been grateful for it ever since.
Thank you. What a great story. I hadn't heard that one. Next, anybody else want to
Go next. Oh, go ahead, Carol.
No, go ahead, Anne-Marie. Yeah.
Okay. Nat, I love that. Divine intervention, divine guidance. I feel like mine, not the same story, but totally divinely guided to it. Like I said, was in corporate America at the time, leading teams, gone through a lot of leadership training. The company provided great education. I actually was certified internally and externally for different things related to processes, related to just helping people exceed in what they're doing. And I still wanted more. I knew corporate America had a lot for me, but I had this feeling, and usually my guess is a lot of people drawn to Newfield have this feeling that there's more for them in life, in their career, whether it's in their current career or not. And I had lunch with someone who was a leadership consultant in my organization, and she was just finishing the Newfield program. I had never heard of it, nor was I even searching a life coaching program at the time. I just knew I liked doing it and I wanted more of it. And every word she was saying about how she changed and how it helped her in her job drew me in. She's like, I'll send you the link. I looked at the link. I said, okay. Like, it's serendipity or divine intervention. And I went to my boss at the time and they said, "Ooh, we have some money left in our budget. Quick, get it in." I mean, that is just, you can't make that up. So it was so fast. I really didn't have time to research other things, but I would say anyone who is researching, you'll know. At least you can narrow it down, but then you'll know if it's right for you. I get tingles. I just know in my spirit, in my gut, and that's a sure sign. And if something like this, like with Nat and me, guided you to this call to Newfield, that's leading you to something that you've been for and wanting more of. And that's how it happened to me. So that's my advice.
Thank you so much, Anne Marie. And I could say more about that because I do think it's important that we listen to not just our heads, because our head will take us to the same place, and that's in Newfield, we're holistic, meaning whole body, whole being. So thank you for bringing that in. Well, Carol, would you like to go next?
Sure. It was interesting. As I mentioned earlier, I spent a number of years in leadership as a healthcare executive here in the Seattle area. We went through an acquisition also in between the years 2016 and 2018, which I participated in, obviously led the work associated. But when it came to what was missing for me, I was ready to do something new. And I didn't know quite what that was at the time when I left the corporation. And I took some time away. I did some other things that were more personal for me. And I started to really think about what was important for me as I looked at my next chapter. And so it was a little like what you mentioned. I had explored a few, folks had said to me, "You've done leadership and coaching forever, just go do it," And I realized that I didn't know what I didn't know. And I hadn't really explored deeply what I wanted to bring to coaching in a way that I thought I could. And so it was sort of serendipitous as well. I had not seen a friend for over a year and a half. We happened to have dinner together. And we were talking about what we were doing next. And she had just graduated from the Newfield program and had a lot of important and wonderful things to say about her experience. On the West Coast, there's been a predominant coaching team here, I would say. And I spoke to a couple of grads from that program. But what I found when I spoke both with my colleague who I had dinner with and when I spoke with Linda and I explored more about Julio and Veronica and the work that they do, I was very much drawn to that. And I didn't look back. It's been a wonderful foundation for me as I've gone forward. And in fact, wished I had done this probably 10 years earlier, because I think even though I felt I was a good leader, I could have been an even better leader. And coach in the work that I did. So yeah, it's been a wonderful part of my life as I've gone forward the last 2 years.
Thank you, Carol. Before I go on, Nate, could you put the name of the book in the chat area? There's a request for it, and yeah, they should be able to find. Yes, and send it to everyone. Thank you. Mark, did you want to answer that, or would you like me to move on? It's up to you, dear.
Yeah, I'd love to answer it. I'll try to be as brief as possible, which is a challenge for me sometimes. But I think I came to it a little differently. I had actually, I'll say, been exposed to the ontological work through a different organization back when I was about 25. I was working as a consultant for Anderson Consulting, and was really struggling on a lot of levels, personally and professionally. And I found these workshops. I often speak of them as these emotional experiential workshops, which blew me away. It was another company, and it was grounded in the ontological work. It was incredible. It's the most powerful thing that's ever happened to me. And I know I sound like an infomercial, but it really changed my life. It truly did, changed everything. And so I was steeped in that work already. And I was years later, when I decided to launch my coaching business, I went into partnership with a guy that had done Newfield 4 or 5 years prior to us starting together. And I knew him well from Anderson Consulting. And we were designing a program for a client. And he was like, we had some questions. He's like, let me get Richard Lacander from Newfield on the phone and let's talk through this with him. And we did. And Richard really brought the business slant of the ontological work. And so after that conversation, I said, Chalmers, I got to go to this program. Like I need some new learning right now. I'm feeling a little stale. And he's like, let's go. And so he actually went to a follow-up program, and I went to their program in 2001, and obviously got exposure to Julio. And what I would say about it now is a really beautiful addition to what I had already learned. Kind of completed the whole package in a way to me, and all the pieces really fit together at that point for me. So it really helped launch me into a whole other level as an executive coach. So
Beautiful. Thank you. Well, I have the privilege of hearing your stories. I haven't heard all those, so thank you very much. There's a question here, but before we address that, so Newfield Network is an ontological coach training program, and ontology, as I've spoken, means the nature of being. And we have theory and we have the models and distinctions. And I think it's important that we begin to give our audience a little idea of why is the theory and model and distinctions important in their application, and what are they? So if anyone would want to start, for me, just hearing ontology and just hearing body, emotion, and language, or linguistics, and how they tie together. Most of us think from the neck up, and in coaching, from what we learned from Newfield is about how important we get information from other parts of our being and how that informs us. And you've talked about listening to your intuition or your inspiration or your gut. So wherever you want to take that would be great. Just jump off, because there's a lot in there.
I'd love to, Linda.
Yeah, please.
So here's how I speak about this now after 23 years. I believe that, and I talk about two models with my clients: the Bell model, body, emotion, language, and how they are so interconnected and congruent and coherent with one another. And then I also use the observer action results model a lot. In fact, I always cover those models anytime I get started with a client in our very first session, because I think it's important for them to understand the framework that I'm listening to and viewing them through, and that we'll be using as we move forward. And so they're incredibly powerful. And here's how I speak about it now. To me, it's one of, I think, many models that have been created over decades that we're trying to put around the human experience, a framework of what it means to be a human being, how we be, if you will. And I know that's not grammatically correct, but and I just, in my own life, in terms of understanding and applicability, have found it to be by far the most powerful model or set of models that have helped me make huge change and growth and learning in my own life. And so literally for me now, and I bring in a lot of other pieces from other modalities and models, but this is the bedrock. Everything springs out of here, and I can make sense of any of those other ones from this frame. And so, when I work with my clients, I introduce it to them right up front, and then deepen each of the three areas. I take them deep into language if that's what their concerns warrant. Sometimes we're really deep into the emotions and moods, and sometimes we're going into the body realm or the biology realm, a lot around changing old habits. And so they invariably all weave together in our conversations as we move along in the coaching. And while I find that my clients don't necessarily, they struggle to remember the lingo, if you will, the specific language we use around the distinction. So I often find myself translating that language for them. And I just tell them it's not important that you remember the lingo. It's important that you understand the concept, so that you don't need me when we're done coaching. You can apply this on your own. So that's sort of my initial cut at that.
Thank you. And what I love about what you said is, ontological coaching gives people a toolbox. So when we're finished coaching with them, that these models and distinctions can live with them, and it's like a toolbox for life. And I often tell people I speak to that if we would have learned this in grade school, our lives would have been very different, because we would begin to understand Let's talk about observer. Someone want to talk about observer, action, result? Because that's, as an observer, what? Anybody want to jump in there?
Jump in on that. That's definitely one of my favorite frameworks or models that I got from Newfield. So basically, the observer is how we look at the world in the macro, and then you can break it down to the micro of how we look at situations, and it's informed by our language, it's informed by our emotions, our moods, our body, going back to the Bell model. It's informed by the assessments that we have of the world, assessments we have of others and ourselves, and how those have melded into narratives or stories that inform how we view the world. And all of that comprising us as the observer is what potentially drives us to a particular action. Any action that we engage in will have a certain result, either positive or negative. And oftentimes what you see with people when you start to really be able to listen for this and really see it is when folks take action that results in a negative consequence, they just double right back to action immediately. So they talk louder, they repeat themselves, you know what I mean? They just double down. And that's what's considered to be first order learning. If you are disciplined and you can drop into second order learning, that's when you loop back. Before you act again, you're going back to the observer, and you're basically checking yourself. Like, what's going on with my body? What's going on with my emotions, my moods? What are the assessments that I'm running through my mind? What are the stories? And you gut check all of that before you decide on what that next action will be. So it's just having that discipline to, I call it and this is cliche, but it's the pause that refreshes. It's like, okay, I tried this, didn't get what I wanted. Am I going to pause? Am I going to go back to the observer part and really do some introspection?
Did a beautiful job, Nate. Thank you.
Thank you.
What I got in touch with was, I don't like being in front of a camera, and yet that's part of my job, right? To do things like this. And so I check myself when I get ready. I allow an hour before we start. There's many things behind the field that I need to take care of. But then I check in also when you were talking about the body, how many times during this, where am I? Am I breathing? Right? Let's talk about how many times do we sit in just tension, right? So thank you so much. I really appreciated your expression there. Bell model, I think we covered. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was going to say, I think you did a wonderful job, because that was one of the more impressive parts for me as well, was first order learning, second order learning, and thinking about, how do you, especially with some of my clients who have also been so much in that realm of thinking, of the cognitive component of the work that they do, that they weren't paying attention to everything behind the scenes, their emotions necessarily. They were acting. And so they develop patterns. And what coaches help them do is see those particular distinctions, feel what sensations they feel in their body, and use their body in ways that also is productive for them. And even the notion of centering, I think, for so many of the execs that I work with, they never heard of it. They don't know what it's about, and how they integrate it into their being is really is something that we talk about, taking them from just doing to being, and then doing as a result of who they become when they have that experience.
And just real quick to tag on to that, in the corporate space, it's been amazing to introduce that model to corporate folks, because when any of you that work in the corporate space, corporate life totally drives first order thinking.
Yeah, you're right.
No time to sit back and reflect, right? And especially with these damn things, like
you mean those cell phones?
Yeah, it's too easy with email and chat and all that to just keep going action, 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 and keep pounding the nail and never take that step back. So
Mhm.
when you get a person to see this for the first time, it can be some immediate change for them right out of the gate.
Mhm.
Somebody mentioned speech acts a little bit ago, which is assessments and assertions, and where we learn linguistics so that it's generative, it moves us forward. Would you like to speak? Because that's part of the Bell model. We've talked a little bit about the body and emotion. We talked about the observer. What about linguistics? What about speech acts? We've just barely touched on that little piece. Why is that important? I mean, we live in language. That should tell us something, right?
I will answer that, but also just say it all ties into just this all brought awareness to me and who I led and coached related to just acting, just speaking, just doing. It's also transparent until you learn these models or just how our bodies and minds work and how the world works and how we can use it. I say it gives us power to live the life we want, the good feeling life, and to interact with our family, friends, and coworkers and clients in such a different way. And when it comes to language, I mean, one of the biggest things is first, how are you talking to yourself? How are you assessing yourself? What limiting beliefs are holding you back from your path that you want to be on and feel you should be on, but yet you feel obligated to talk about what's going wrong and what you don't have yet? And so to me, one of the big things was changing my language about myself and my abilities and giving myself credit. And then realizing who is sharing something that maybe doesn't lift me up, and then why are they sharing it? What words are they using to probably based on their observer, how they see things and their limiting beliefs, how they're acting to me. So it just changed my language, my vocabulary, and how I talk to myself, how I led people. Every individual had a different lens and how they were seeing. It just made me so much more aware of why maybe a colleague was frustrated in a meeting and how I could respond with different language to understand first. Just answering your language question, it was just awareness first, and then working on myself, which Newfield does such a good job of. First you work on yourself, even though you think you got this. you don't got this. I think we can all attest to that first 4 months or so where you grow personally like you never thought. That's what really helped me to then change my language with others and coach others to really help them take power and control in a positive way and not take things personally and really rise up above anything that comes their way.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
I'd like to come behind that if that's okay, Linda.
Yeah, please, Mark.
I love the way you said that, Anne-Marie, and I want to kind of come at it from a leadership perspective. Why the speech acts, one reason why the speech acts are so important, the way we talk about it is if you really look at what leaders get paid to do in our world today, and it's been this way for quite some time, they get paid to have effective conversations. It's really it. All their time is spent in meetings, emails, text, phone. But if you look at the fundamental action of leadership, it's conversational in nature, speaking, listening, all the aspects, the emotional aspect of the conversation, the bodily piece. We talk about often body language, right? So one of the pieces that I love about the speech acts, they are these, I call them 6. Sometimes we debate if there's 5 or 6, but these 6 language tools that I'm going to equip my client with. And if you've got those, I think you're light years ahead of many other leaders in terms of your ability to use those speech acts effectively. And so, like Anne-Marie said, I think there are 3, the declarations, assessments, and assertions that really lend themselves to the evaluative and declarative piece as a leader that you have to be able to do and understand. But then there's the other 3, requests, offers, and promises, which are fundamentally about how we coordinate action. So that's entirely about execution and implementation in an organization where where we often have so many troubles. And so I just think they're powerful in terms of my clients knowing the tools they're using as they have these conversations. And I'll say one more thing. I totally agree with Anne Marie. The most important conversation to start paying attention to is the one you have with yourself, is your private conversation. Because when we talk about conversations, it's both public conversations like we're having here, but it's also the private conversations that each and every one of us on this call are having with ourselves that nobody else can hear. That's often the most important one to take care of.
And right there, you know, in the program, we say a coach needs a coach. You know, we're always growing, right? And so as we go along this path, getting support periodically is always important. Carol, you were going to say something.
Yeah, no, I was going to say that, you know, one of the ways that I've adapted that sort of self-talk component, the assessments that we've made and we have singing in our own head, especially for my executive clients, they're basically, we call them the board of directors. What are those board of directors that speak to you in different ways, and who are serving you and who are not serving you, and making choices around what voices you want to continue with, and what will help you get to the next level. Those have been, you know, you have to adapt the language a little bit for clients depending on, you know, how they will engage with you in terms of some of this work, which is, you know, which for some of them is extremely foreign. They haven't named this. They just know they have a sense of lack of confidence. They don't know why they can't get something done, you know? And so there's often, you know, different ways of course, that you adapt an approach, but it's still based in the foundations of what I learned around the language arts, including, Mark, you know, the conditions of satisfaction, which oftentimes are the things that are not well explained or explicit, creates a lot of misunderstandings and issues, right?
Yep, absolutely, spot on.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting here thinking, I have some questions. I have 3 questions. They kind of lend themselves to the same domain. They're about leadership. They're about people are trying to get their head around themselves and putting themselves into the situation of how Newfield's program can support them. And the first one that I received was, how does someone who has not ever been in a leadership role but had been in the corporate world long enough to have enough lessons learned fit into the course?
What was the end of that question? I didn't hear the last part.
The last part was fit into the course. So they're saying they've been in corporate America, but they haven't been in a leadership role, and they've learned a lot of lessons while they're in corporate America. How do they fit into the course?
Well, you know, as just a member of society, a member of your family, a member of having to go to meetings, we're constantly building relationships and having conversations, as Mark always says, or said a few times, sorry. And gosh, this course, first of all, I'll say, I always believe we lead from where we stand. It doesn't matter what your title is. It doesn't matter if you are the head of the company or on a team, as part of a project, that kind of thing. You are leading from where you stand in how you speak to others, how you feel about yourself, and how you can get things done in a way that feels good and can bring people together. Like Linda said, we could use this in kindergarten. Literally anyone in any job, whether you're an entrepreneur or in a corporate America or in a small business, can have better relationships through this work. Number one, feel better about yourself and what you can bring to this world. Big or small impact, it's all part of it. And it's a rippling thing, I found. When I showed up differently to a meeting where I was just with peers, I wasn't leading anyone, and I was able to be in a more grounded, positive place and listen and speak and encourage others to kind of get there just by me being that way. We had more productive meetings, and we got things done in different ways. So I guess in a roundabout way, I'm just saying it doesn't matter leadership or not. This will help you in life and personally and professionally in my mind. And it continues to help me today in having a teenage daughter,
Right.
you know, and how I listen and talk and how I'm seeing her observe. Like, it's endless of where it could apply.
I want to just say something that Newfield is not just about corporate work.
Mm,
You know, I'm a coach and I have a private practice. But more importantly, the first half of the Newfield Network program is about you becoming a better you,
mhm,
you being the coachee. If you can't know this through your own being and have shifts, you really can't help somebody else. And my definition of coaching is powerful leadership, whether it's in my home, whether it's in my private relationship, or whether I'm out in the world in some way. It's really about just what Anne Marie just said. How do I show up? And others have said, how do I show up? What do I know about myself? Am I making the world a better place, or am I making a mess? And so we're looking for a career when we come to coach training often, but it's really about becoming a more comfortable, more personable, more at peace human being from my perspective.
mhm.
I say this is the third most important thing I've ever done in my life. So I'm going to move on real quick because I have other questions, and then you all can say whatever you want. I'm not directing you. Can you speak to the journey of learning the approach, models, and tools, and how you incrementally incorporated them into your work with clients over time, as distinct from applying to yourself as part of embodying the approach? And I can repeat that if you like. Can you speak to the journey of learning the approach, the model, the tools, and how you incrementally incorporated them into your work with clients over time, as distinct from applying to yourself as part of embodying the approach?
I,
Oh, sorry, Mark, go ahead.
I think I'll react to that. My first response to that is they're not distinct. That's my initial just thought that went through my head, like who I am and how I apply them, the ontological distinctions in my full life, professionally, personally, friendships, social, taking care of my body, all of that stuff. I mean, that's probably the bigger growth I've had in terms of it changes who I am, the observer I am, my way of being. And I inherently then bring that to my coaching. And so, what I would say, I could talk about my journey and all that stuff and how I began to understand the distinction and apply them. But in a way, I started applying them immediately. There wasn't as much of a, incremental adding on with the models. It was like I was grounded in that and I took off. Now, what I will say is that as I've done my work, and it's incredible how some of the most simple distinctions I got from Newfield, now will show up for me like, oh my gosh, I just learned something about choice. Oh my gosh, I just learned something about my belief and how this is trapping me from having the health I want. I've been doing that recently in my health and wellness work. I'm discovering some beliefs I'm holding rather rigidly. So as I let them, I know their assessments, and as I let them go, I'm changing. I hope this makes sense. I'm changing, and I bring that wisdom and learning from my own experience into my work with my clients. And it's not introducing new models per se. It's deepening the way I bring the models to them and connect it to what they're bringing to the conversation. And it just seems to get more and more powerful every day. The conversations, the depth and the richness I'm having, it really blows me away these days. I'm like, wow, this is going to a whole other level. So I don't know if I answered the question or not, but that's my take.
To what that question was, it said about the embodiment. I think the fact that we learn to embody this first, it makes it easier to speak it.
Yes.
As
Absolutely.
a matter of fact, we have
Sure.
a portion in the first half of the program where you have a learning group that you host, and it teaches you how to begin to speak about and share about and be in conversation about. And if you're changing, people are going to see that, and you're going to be changing, and you're always going to be up leveling if you stay with this work. And so for me, I think that Julio talks about the importance of being a beginner, right? We meet you where you are. And if you come with a beginner's mind, it's incredible the distance you'll go, in my experience. So I loved, Mark, what you said. We bring it into our work where we embodied it, and then we, as we see how it's working, it gives us the courage and the understanding of how to use it even more, and in what other areas we can use it and how to use it. So there is a process. Like, I'm not the same person I was 12 years ago, and I know you, Mark, and the rest of you, Nate and Carol and Anne-Marie, would say the same thing. We continue to grow because it lit me on fire. I have the best life today as a result of that. But I came to have a new career. I didn't come to have a better life. And I got that as a bonus.
Yeah, I think of it as the difference between the way people approach things from a transactional perspective throughout their life versus a transformational approach, which means you never stop. You know, you're constantly transforming. Mark has been transforming over those 23 years he's been doing this. I have over the last 2 years. It wasn't a cookie cutter, I'm going to try this and this and this. It was very much an embodiment and an ability to bring different facets for different clients together in ways that would help support their journey as they were looking to, you know, to grow and to make some different choices in their life. And that's, I think, what was so powerful about all the different elements that we learned through the Newfields program. And I used it last week with my 5-year-old grandson. You know, we had to work through a few things and distinctions, and you know, so it does apply as I think both Anne-Marie and Mark have talked about, across all elements of your life. It's not just about the work that you do; it's about how you engage.
I love, Linda, how you said that about. Well, now I'm going to forget how you said it.
Say it in your own words.
You came for a career, but you came back so much more. I believe we want everything we want, the relationship, the health, the career, because of how it'll make us feel. Because if you just get the career and you're in a higher leadership position as a result of a life coaching program, you might still feel unsettled. And what this program does is it helps you understand how to feel good about yourself and your interactions, that will then lead you to the right career or promotion or what have you. So it's so important to not just look at it from a transactional thing, like Carol said. It's just like getting to a good feeling place so that it's clear where your path will take you. And Newfield does such a good job of making you feel comfortable by the time you're getting in front of a person and start coaching with what you said, learning groups, study groups. You get your own coach for a while, and then you start coaching people. And like, it's such a well done program to make you comfortable with the process. And then at first you might be a little bit more like, okay, I got to do this and this in this order. And then very quickly, you'll just do it more intuitively and naturally, and know where it fits with a client or anyone else in your life.
Thank you, Anne-Marie.
Just tack on real quick to Anne-Marie. Totally second what you're saying about program design. And it is so awesome and immersive that if you do go through the program, because it is so immersive and intense, you can't unlearn it. You can't undo it. You can't unfeel it. Like, so that, just be prepared, because once you do this stuff, it will work on you. It really will, in a very positive way. But there's no going back. That's all I'm saying. It'll change you.
I know Julio's care is to give people a good career, but most importantly, he cares to help make a difference in the world. So exponentially, you know, every person that we train that goes out to touch somebody who touches somebody, and we start shifting the conversation on the planet, where people start talking to each other. Julio taught me that conversation comes from a Latin root that has two roots to it, meaning to change together or to turn towards each other. If you're not in a conversation that's happening, where you're turning towards each other and changing together, you're not in a conversation. And that's what Field teaches about. I used to not know how to be in a conversation that was difficult. I wouldn't know where to go with that. How do I ask a question? What do I do with these emotions that are coming up? Because it might even be an adversarial positioning, right? And that's the beauty of this work. It really rounds us out as a human being, not a human doing. I know there's a question here. Could you perhaps give an example of a coaching model you have been giving to a client? What was the problem of the client? How many sessions? How did you approach? What was the transformation and outcome? What kind of tool did the client bring home? That's a big question. Basically, he's asking to take him through a bit of a understanding of working with someone. And I don't know if anybody has somebody in mind without naming them. Of course, you wouldn't do that. We have confidentiality.
I can take 15 seconds and hammer an example.
Go.
The observer action results model. I use that with an executive over the course of probably 8 coaching sessions. They were the typical executive of action, 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 and never going back to observer. And they started, things were getting better for them as soon as the 3rd coaching session, because they had so many areas where they could apply that. And they had better success almost right out of the gate. And they were absolutely a believer. And we hadn't even touched on body deeply. We barely touched on emotions. I focused mostly on the acts of language and the OR model, and that made them a true believer. Totally opened up their mind to everything else that I could coach to, and really worked out well for them.
Appreciate that. Does anybody else feel enlivened by that question?
That was a really good example. I'll just share, just helping people understand why they have the thoughts and emotions and beliefs that they have, by kind of helping them go through questions to really understand their observer, or the lens they see themselves and the world. I think most of my clients who are yearning for a new career, let's say, and not sure what it is because they've been in a role for a long time and they're just know there's something, but they're not sure, helping them understand why they believe they can't do something totally different, going through the observer model first instead of just applying for jobs, and finding out what does light them up. Why do they think there's a limit? All of that is in the OR model, as far as helping them understand their observer, and then bringing them to action when they're a little bit more confident and open to explore and believe that it's really limitless of what they could do in their career. And then they start seeing different results that they haven't had before because they've dropped limiting beliefs that don't serve them anymore.
Beautiful. So we're coming close, but there's a question I always ask. Thank you, Anne-Marie. And is there one thing that you would like to say to the audience that I haven't asked? Is there one message, one thought, anything that you would like to say to the audience that I may not have touched on or such? This would be the time, and then I'll do a closing. Yes, Carol.
I would offer that one of the things that drew me to Newfield, quite honestly, was how international it was. I mean, I've met people from all over the world, and I've grown close to folks that were in my study group, where I've continued those relationships over the course of the last 2 years. I would say that the parts that we talk about also in the program around cultural discourse, discord, and just different things that make up who you are as an observer were important things to take into consideration. And that was extremely helpful in an example of a client that I had who had a ton of cultural expectations, and we had to work through those to understand what was still relevant and what was not for him. And so, once again, that ability to open your mind, create self-awareness, more awareness in general, were elements that were really important to me as I think about my experience there.
Beautiful. Thank you for touching on that, Carol.
I'd like to say something, Linda.
Yes, Mark.
The word fit is what comes up. If we're talking about, I can't remember if we've talked explicitly about it, but if you're sitting there in this webinar wondering, is this my school? Is this a school for me? So we're talking about selection of a school. The word fit comes up for me. I often talk to coaches about find the school that's the right fit for you. Does it resonate with you? And so I'll actually use the Bell model to describe that word fit for me. It's not just, is it an intellectual fit? That's the language circle, logical, rational thinking. Pay attention, especially on this call, like what was the emotional reaction you might have had to anything we were saying or talking about? And maybe even more importantly, what was going on in your body? Was there a place in there in which your body's like almost drawn or like going, yeah. So to me, it's fit in all those dimensions. We tend to, I think, privilege the logical side and the thinking side, but there's more to it than that. But ultimately, I'd say if you're looking at schools, did this one have the fit for you? And I would say base most, if not all of your decision on fit, because there are a lot of great schools out there that are different fits for different people. But to me, this one just, it rocked. I mean, it was absolutely the right fit for me.
Great. Thank you so much.
In 10 seconds, I would just say, with the way the world is right now, the world needs many, many, many more people that know and understand and feel what we know, understand, and feel because we went to this program. So sign up.
Yeah, thank you.
You're right there on the right in the chat. We need you.
I would have said everything that you said, and then I'll just add that people like Linda and Julio and the staff, so heart-centered and in your best interest, and it's just, you felt safe, and it just an overall great experience.
Thank you. Thank you. This has been so much fun for me. A little selfish that I get to spend time with people that I care about and haven't seen for a while. So we do have a program coming up in September. Newfield Network has 2 programs a year, September and March. And we're enrolling for the September one, and the information is in the chat right now. Also the information and getting in touch with me. And you can find me all over the website. You can schedule appointments on my calendar there, send me an email or register. We appreciate you being here today. Newfield Network, again, has been serving for over 31 years, and we are a leader in the field. And if it is for you, a fit, as Mark said, listen. And if you have more questions, we're here to answer them. We want the right people in the room so everyone has the best experience that they can have. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Anne Marie. Thank you, Carol. Thank you, Nate. And in the background, thank you, Kelly. And have a blessed day, everyone. We appreciate your time.